Hi, this is Paras Verma and I am going to teach you the muscular tissue from the chapter of 11th Movement and Locomotion. The name of the chapter is Movement and Locomotion. In order for our bodies to move forward or in a standing place, when we want to move this and this way in different directions, we want to move stretching our body, or we want to move in a different direction, the body needs primarily two things. In order to move, the body needs two things. One is the skeletal system and other is the muscular system. When we talk about something called as the skeletal system, it is primarily made of the bones and cartilage, and the muscular system is primarily made of the muscles. When we talk about the muscles, muscles have the ability to contract. These muscles have the ability to contract and relax. Owing to the property of contraction and relaxations, the muscle can produce two different kinds of movements. The muscles are capable to do two things. One is pushing and other is pulling. These are the two different things that can be done by the muscles. When we talk about pushing and pulling, you're trying to basically identify the muscles which are associated with the joints. Trying to simplify this thing, let's understand what is the different type of muscles present in a body. When we talk about the different type of muscles present within a body, three types of muscles are present. One is skeletal muscles, another is cardiac muscles, and another is smooth muscle. These three different kind of muscles which are present within a body, the word skeletal, if emphasized upon, you can see the skeletal is somewhat related. And what exactly are these muscles working upon? What exactly are these muscles doing? These skeletal muscles are associated with the skeletal system and allows our body to move, allows the movement of our body. And the catch here is, when you talk about the skeletal muscles, the movement of the body is according to the will of the individual. The skeletal muscles are allowing the individual to move according to its will. Hence, the skeletal muscles are also termed as voluntary muscles. The discussion is primarily focusing upon the skeletal muscles, and let's understand the skeletal muscles in detail. The skeletal muscle associated with the skeletal system, also termed to be as voluntary muscle, is itself a tissue. Any movement or locomotion is done by the tissue called as the muscular tissue. And when we talk about any time, when you're talking about something we call as tissue, this tissue is a thing which is composed of cells. And the most important fact, when you're trying to understand a particular muscle, you're trying to understand what kind of cells it is made up of. When we talk about the cells of the skeletal muscles, the cells of the skeletal muscle in brief, altogether the cells of any muscle should be given the same name. And what exactly is this name? This name is termed as myocyte. If one focuses upon the word cells of muscle, let's try to break down this word and understand cells of muscle. When you study the word cyte, This site explains something which we call as cell, and myo has the Greek origin of the muscle. This myocyte, that means muscle cell. This myocyte of the skeletal muscle is arranged in terms of long rods. These long rods having the nucleus within them, arranged in terms of long fibers. These individual cells, myocytes, arranged in terms of fibers, are also termed as myofibers. We just understood this thing. The muscles have the property to contract. The contraction or relaxation of the body. When a person tries to contract something, imagine yourself to be holding a particular rope. You try to pull the rope towards yourself. This rope comes towards this thing. This is contraction. Try to pull something, push something. This pushing, this movement is termed as pushing. These two properties can be easily exhibited by something which we call as skeletal muscle. And how exactly does it go? To understand this thing, we need to understand the structure of the skeletal muscle in detail. Any type of muscle in a body is present. Any type of muscle in a body is made up of different type of individual smaller units, which we term as monomers. And let's try to understand what exactly are these monomers. Initially, the cell, which is the myocyte, is made up of small, very small fibers called as fibrils, and because these fibrils are associated with the muscle, you should be terming that as myofibrils. These myofibrils are more individually or detailedly, if we go into more details, if we go into more microscopic details, these myofibrils are made up of myofilaments. These myofilaments that are present in the body are of primarily two types: myosin and actin. This myosin and actin are the individual myofilaments which bundle together to form the myofibrils, and this myofibrils bundle to form together the complete myocyte. And what exactly are these fibrils or filaments doing? This myosin and actin are the things which are involved in the contraction of the particular muscle. How exactly does it go? This myosin and this actin, if shown in the form of a diagram, how does it go? This is a molecule of myosin. This is a molecule of myosin. It is complex. We understand this. It is a complex polymer. And when we are trying to study something which we call as polymer, polymer is always made up of smaller things which we call as monomer. Made of monomer. This polymer made up of the monomers, this is the complete myosin structure, which is a polymer. It is made up of monomers. This is the complete myosin structure. This myosin is made up of, being a polymer, is made up of multiple monomers, and these monomers are termed as meromyosin. Understood? These structures compositely are arranged in two forms: heavy meromyosin. The portion which looks to be the heavy, this portion, heavy meromyosin, and the portion which looks to be light is termed as light meromyosin. Heavy meromyosin and the light meromyosin are the two monomers of the polymer which we call as the myosin, which is involved in the contraction of the particular muscle. An individual muscle has to contract, that means the cells of the muscle has to contract, and the myocyte has to contract owing to the property given by the myosin and the actin. This myosin has two sites on its body. On the head of the myosin, you have two sites. here the first type of site, and here the another type of site. In this head of the myosin, in the heavy meromyosin, you have the sites which are termed to be as ATP binding sites, and these sites present here are explained to be as actin binding sites. Here, as the name indicates, these are the sites that should be having the capability to bind to the actin, and these are the sites which are binding to the ATP. And why exactly do we need to do that? Why do we need to bind to the ATP? We understand this process in the mechanism of contraction of muscle. Let's come back to this thing. The structure of the myosin is evidently clear. Let's move to the structure of actin. The structure of the actin goes this way. There is a long filament called as F-actin. This long filament is not just single but double in a single unit. Going like this. This long filament is individually made of a small beaded particles, globules, small globules, giving it a globular structure. Something which we can associate with something we call as pearl. So, this long filaments can be termed as F-actin, and individually the individuals, the pearl-like structure, the globule should be termed as G-actin or globular actin. This is the structure of actin, and this actin has to bind to the myosin. And let's understand exactly the complete composition of the actin. These myofilaments, myosin and actin, are staying inside the muscle, and upon the actin we have two more type of muscle proteins. Upon the actin, two more muscle proteins which we call as troponin and tropomyosin. The troponin and the tropomyosin are associated with the actin. How is it associated? Let's see with this diagram. Let's try to erase this thing, the F-actin and the G-actin, to see the complete structure. For the sake of simplicity, this complete individual unit of actin is covered by something which we call as tropomyosin, which is a thread. This is the tropomyosin, which is a thread, and this tropomyosin is kept at its place. This tropomyosin does not move from here. It is in this exact place, and it is kept at this place with the help of small beaded structures. The other protein termed as troponin. As you would recall, the myosin, the head of the myosin, had this structure called as actin binding sites. That means the actin molecules, the individual G globular actin, should be having something called as myosin binding sites. So, on this structure, if I say under this red line, there is something called as myosin binding site, which is covered by this red thread. Wherever the red threads overlaps this thing, there is a myosin binding site. Hence, upon the actin, there is a myosin binding site, which is covered by something, the another protein, tropomyosin, on the complete structure. In simple terms, if it has to be explained, it can be said that the actin contains myosin binding sites, but these myosin binding sites are covered with the tropomyosin. And the tropomyosin tends to move away from its place, but in order to keep it at its place, troponin is present. This troponin keeps the tropomyosin at its individual place. Do you understand this thing? So we have the complete myofibrils composed of myofilaments, myosin and actin, plus two more, tropomyosin and troponin. Tropomyosin is trying to keep the myosin binding sites on actin covered with the help of troponin. And this myosin is lying in the muscle, waiting for the actin's active sites to open so that both of them can bind. This is the basic structure of a muscle. Thank you so much. The other part would be covered in the next video.